So hello everybody on the live stream. Can you write something in chat? Because we are really curious if we can get questions from you in real time. So that would be awesome to know if anybody is listening. And other than that, let's get rolling. I think we will be about 45 minutes.
Is that a treadmill motto?
Oh, it looks like we can't hear him.
Are you on a treadmill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to be on a treadmill.
Cool. Let's do a round of intros. My name is Chris, and I'm only moderating, so I'm only asking questions because I want to learn from all the amazing people that we have on the panel. And today on the panel we have Marta, who is right now on the treadmill and also in UK. Marta, what are you up to, like professionally and stuff? Do you want to say a couple of words?
Well, what I'm up to professionally, other than walking, it is a full-time job. I am head of community at Balancer Labs. So I'm leading all of the efforts to build a strong community and educate our whole ecosystem to then be able to create a DAO, since Balancer's mission is to become a DAO within the next 3 years. Prior to that, I've been in permission blockchain space, so please don't kill me. I also touched that, and prior to that, I also was at Bitcoin. So all sort of things, always have been in that space, basically.
Cool. Where are you, and what are you up to day to day?
Are we still talking to Marta here, or do we change people?
Peter, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear. I thought you were asking that to Marta.
No. I think I broke up for a second, but I was asking Peter, like, where are you and what are you up to day to day? We'll talk longer about how we got into this space and like sort of.
I'm in Sydney, Australia right now. Stuck here for 2 years. Mostly investing into early stage networks at 1KX. Probably one of the most hands-on sort of early stage investors in the space.
Pretty cool. Thank you for jumping on in the middle of the night, I guess. And Patrick, how about you? What are you up to day, and where are you right now?
Yeah, a lot of stuff. I mean, like everybody going a million miles per hour in this space. So my name is Patrick. I'm a developer advocate on the Chainlink protocol. Chainlink being a decentralized Oracle service, taking data from the real world, bringing it on chain, or doing any type of external computation, or really just taking these smart contracts and empowering them, and taking these blockchains and leveling them up to do even more and help the world in fantastic ways. So everything that I do in my day-to-day, everything that I touch, everything that I interact with, I do to help engineers in this space be wildly successful. So whether that's from creating tutorials, doing stuff like this where we're talking to engineers, being on hackathons, helping out hackathon attendees, helping out engineers who are creating their startups, who are long established or in any way, shape, or form. I'm here to make them successful.
Very cool. Very cool. So I think our audience today are mainly people who are just getting into blockchain, and like, chat, do let us know if this is not the case. So we are going to try to cover what the future of the blockchain is, maybe very briefly, because like 1 year, 3 years out, like it's probably going to be big, like the whole internet thing. But I don't know if we know exactly. We can like do some crazy speculations about that. But I think it would be super useful if we covered like what's the future of the blockchain for our participants. Like, how can you get in? How did we get in? What are the good steps to start developing and make sense of all of it? So maybe let's do a round of like, how did you get into space, and why do you think this is interesting at all? And this time we can start with Patrick.
Yeah, sure. So I got into this space somewhat recently. Well, a year and a half, I guess. Maybe I'm dinosaur-y. I don't know. Crypto moves fast. A year is probably a long time. Maybe a year and a half, almost, getting close to 2 years now. I was actually working in kind of the more traditional fintech world. I had worked at a hedge fund for a couple of years, and then after that, I was at a data provider, a financial data provider. Getting like pricing data for different securities, different stocks, and I started learning more about smart contracts, and I was intrigued because, especially in the fintech world, there are a lot of issues around, who owns what, where data can go, where data can't go, who has access to what financial products. And there's just a lot of issues in the traditional world. And so I started learning more and more about smart contracts, and I was kind of blown away. I started going deeper and deeper to this rabbit hole of this world where, holy wow, like, there all this decentralization, kind of this dispersal of power, kind of this shift in paradigm, the shift in the way kind of we think of, monetary policy, agreements, trustless agreements versus, high trust agreements. And yeah, I was blown away. And Chainlink, obviously, having me come from, a more traditional data background, a more traditional kind of fintechy background, it just made a lot of sense, right? Because in order for these smart contracts to really go from being kind of these walled gardens, right, to coming into, into everyday use, into smart contracts that can help everybody in every way, they need data, and they need highly validated, highly decentralized data in order to keep kind of these key metrics that make smart contracts, which keep them decentralized, keeping them auto executing, etc. And so that's basically how I got into the space. And every day I dig a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole, and just love it more and more. And yeah, I like to play with pretty much anytime any protocol comes out with a tool or a feature or a product. I'm trying to jump on it. I try to learn. I try to code it myself. That way I can teach other people how to, come on, whether they're brand new. And so this is for a lot of you guys who are new here, whether you're brand new, whether you've been in this space for years, there's always a ton of stuff to learn. There's always a ton of great people to sync with. And there's a ton of tools, and it sounds like we're going to be going through some of those resources today. So yeah, just everyday learning and growing, and 100% amped about it.
Super cool. So was it difficult transition? Let's dig deeper into that. So what tech stack were you dealing in with the hedge fund? How did your transition look like?
Well, so I was doing more Python development, which I absolutely love Python. I still code. I try to do Python for all my projects, like all my personal projects. There's for those of you looking for the next tool, there's a smart contract development platform or framework called Brownie. I absolutely love it. I tweet about it all the time because it's in Python, and so it allows you to kind of do all your testing and automation in Python, but still code your Solidity smart contracts in like a really sensible way. So I do a lot of stuff with Brownie. So that part was pretty easy. But I have learned a lot of JavaScript because a lot of this space still uses kind of like JavaScript frameworks like Hardhat, like Truffle, which is still really good. But to me, the hardest part, actually, not even like tech-wise, was kind of like wrapping my head around the new paradigm. Like, okay, like, wait, why does this work like this? Or why is this protocol better? Or why did they do it like that? Because in a traditional world, everything's just a centralized server, and you can kind of just be like, well, that's just the way that they did it. But with having all the code be on chain, having all the code be auditable by everybody, kind of trying to understand, where the use cases are. To me, that was like conceptually, that was the harder part. Because when you think of, you think, oh, okay, everything's decentralized. Somebody put it to me really humorously once. They were like, oh, a lot of people think that this is just some kind of like movement where, nothing actually is going to happen because there's no like economic incentives behind everything. But to me, there's actually more economic incentives and more reason to get in. A lot of people think, okay, if you're giving, power back to the people, then, a lot of big players don't want to get in. I disagree. I think this is creating a wealth of financial opportunities, from your decentralized agreements to any type of DeFi product. And so, yeah, to me, the harder transition was actually the conceptual piece. But once I fell down that rabbit hole, there was no going back. Everything just made a ton of sense. And one of the cool parts technology wise is I have had to and got to learn a whole bunch of technologies, right? Because this whole space uses so many different technologies, right? Like Solidity obviously is massive because it's, the main language that people build smart contracts with, but it's more than just Solidity. There's a lot of tools around Solidity. For example, Brownie, Hardhat, Truffle. These are Python and JavaScript frameworks for testing, and automating your smart contracts, which is great. So you get to learn some Python, get to learn some JavaScript. I work a lot with Go because a lot of the Chainlink core code is written in Go. So I got to learn Go, and I learned kind of all the ins and outs of Go, which is really cool. Rust is another language that's really popular in the space. Polkadot, Solana, and there are a couple other chains that are using these low level, these lower level languages to make their blockchains go really, really, really fast. So to me, it hasn't been so hard. There has been a transition period from having to quickly like swap around languages. But yeah, to me, maybe that's one of the other harder transitions is like learning all these technologies. But the other thing is you don't even have to. Like if you want to do Solidity and Hardhat or just pure Solidity, you can, right? You don't have to learn a million languages. But for me, because I'm trying to help everybody, I want to know everybody. I want to know everything so I can help everything. But yeah, no, it's to me the really hard part is conceptually, and then once you get past that, you're good to go.
Where do you go? Like short version is like you're a developer, you're just jumping in. Like where do you go on the internet to start learning about this stuff and like be up to speed in a weekend or in a week? Can you do it in a weekend, or do you need like 7 months to get started as a developer in the space?
Great question. So my first time coding Solidity was actually at ETH Denver 2 years ago now, or a year and a half ago.
Excellent event. Yeah. One of the last event before the lockdown started.
Yes.
Also,
yeah,
right?
exactly. One of the, I entered the space like right at the right time. And at ETH Denver, I took pretty much the whole weekend to like code. I basically, that weekend I was like, okay, I'm going to learn Solidity this weekend. And yeah, that's when I learned Solidity. I did it in a weekend. I mean, and same with any programming language, like you can like learn it in a weekend, but you can't learn it in a weekend. I mean, I'm still learning stuff every day, like that's new about Solidity. It's really just time behind the wheel. With any language, the longer you do it, the better you get. I would say I learned the basics in a weekend, and then I got decent. Well, yeah, I mean, maybe that's being not humble enough, but I got much better, much more comfortable in like 6 months or something like that. But yeah, you can learn this stuff really quickly, especially if you have a little bit of previous programming experience. If you don't have any, that's also fine. To answer your other question, so there are tons of spaces out there. If you literally just Google Learn Solidity, we've got a ton of great resources. I think there's some great courses on Udemy. If you're looking for a paid course, Free Code Camp has some great courses. Dapp University has some great ones. Ivan on Tech has some great courses. And there's a ton of free content as well. Crypto Zombies. If you're looking for a free course that kind of gamifies it, Crypto Zombies is fantastic. If you're looking to learn some of the security, some of the in and out, Ethernaut is a great game. There's Consensus has a coding bootcamp, which is really good. Chainshot also has a great coding bootcamp. So there's really just tons of different places to learn and grow. And then what I would say to kind of go one step further, because what happens sometimes when a lot of people start their engineering journeys is they get caught in what's called like bootcamp hell, where they just go like bootcamp tutorial to tutorial. They don't actually learn anything. And I would say for those of you kind of stuck in that, just take the step, join a hackathon. To me, that's really the next step. Join a hackathon, build a project on your own, because that's really where you're going to stumble and you're going to run into issues. And that's when you'll connect with community members, like myself, like other people in the community. And really connect. So some great places for that are, the Chainlink Discord. Obviously, you can jump in there, and there's a ton of good YouTube videos on the Chainlink YouTube. We do a ton of demos on, obviously showing how to work with oracles, but smart contracts in general. And I have some YouTube videos as well. And yeah, there's a ton of resources. But definitely join a hackathon. Definitely join a community, and definitely reach out and say hello.
Very cool. Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, this is excellent advice. And I guess people in the chat right now are attending a hackathon, so they're headed in the right direction. Excellent bootcamp over the weekend. Austin Griffith, who has some really excellent material to get up to speed on Ethereum development, will be doing a session tomorrow, I guess. So this is super great. Let's switch gears a bit. Let's switch gears a bit. Peter, how about you? You're less on the development side, more on the investment side, and like, you know, creating DAOs side. Like, would love to listen on like how did you get into space, because your path was slightly different, and I guess there are different lessons there.
Yeah, sure. I spend most of my day talking to new founders, trying to build like new token networks, right? And either that or sort of like helping portfolio projects with mostly a lot of the community development. So there's just like all these challenges around, you know, how do you launch a token network? How do you go ahead and build a community of contributors around that, right? So that's sort of what I think about a lot. And I guess like my path here is a bit, you know, sort of this complete outside, I think, you know, 4 years ago, where I was actually a UX designer for you know, like as sort of like my main trade, right? My main sort of thing I did. And I think like 4 years ago back, you know, there weren't any users nor were there any sort of real products out there. So as a designer, you know, you couldn't really contribute to the space too much. So just like, you know, I helped out whenever I could. I wrote documentation for projects I liked, you know, like mastering Ethereum. I learned by reading and doing like editing, you know, like literal grammar and spell checking for that project, right? I contributed to different open source projects, like as a non-technical, like, you know, someone who's not from the engineering, not from an engineering background. And so just like contribute in different ways. And that's how I learned a lot about the space. I try to understand about the history of like, really like, you know, I guess the context of where blockchains come from, you know, the different, you know, I try to really understand sort of the historical context of like, you know, like I didn't come from a computing background. So I try to understand like computing itself, the history of computing, and like how the internet worked, how computers worked, and like why that, you know, why blockchains do matter in that sense, right? Then slowly I sort of just started contributing to projects, mostly as like a PM or like operations person. And that's where I started helping out with a working group focused around user-facing application layer infrastructure known as meta transactions, right? And just like contributed to working groups, coordinated research groups, mostly like operations person. I didn't really understand really a lot of the discussions that were happening, to be honest. Like I was sort of piecing it together and learning by osmosis. And you know, but the interesting thing was like I sort of used my like designer mindset to frame everything from the point of the user, right? And like I saw a lot of I saw things like technologies through that lens. That community became known as Metacartel. So that, you know, was mostly, I think, I would say the earliest community in Ethereum focused on sort of the application layer specifically, right? Yeah. And, you know, we talked a lot about infrastructure, but a lot about the, you know, use cases that we wanted to experiment with. So in 2019, we were like, or late 2018, we were like, let's create a dApp incubator, right? And with the whole rationale that like we wanted more people to work on use cases and build out applications. This went nowhere because there was no money anywhere to be found. There was, you know, there were hardly any, you know, developers building actual products. And I think, you know, also, yeah, and in that sense, it was like the bottom of the bear market too. And we at Metacartel and me, we didn't know too many people, to be honest. A lot of Metacartel at the core, you know, were people who came from like the 2017 cohort, right? And I think there was a lot of like, there was a separation there. I think in crypto, when I first entered, it felt like very cliquish. Like, you know, there were people who entered in 2015, 14, who like I felt like knew secrets. I didn't, right? And they all hung out by themselves. And I guess Metacartel, we were all like thinking about the application layer and use cases, right? And I guess we were an odd bunch because we were mostly sort of outsiders who came in around the same time, right? So I think, but yeah, I think it was a very good group. We became very good friends, and I guess even though we couldn't launch a dApp incubator, we kept on thinking, how can we like, you know, build a community of developers and founders like on focusing on dApps, right? So, you know, and then around like early 2019, I wanted to join this DAO called Moloch DAO. So originally we had the DAO, which was like, you know, had $150 million, you know, coordinated in it, and it got hacked, and then it created like this, you know, hard fork for Ethereum. Hindsight, that's a very small amount of money, but back, I think, you know, in the start of 2019, no one were talking about DAOs, to be honest. It was not even a concept. There was maybe DAOs like an Aragon, but even then, no one really experimented with DAOs in a tangible, practical manner, right? And so what Moloch did was, I would say, I describe it as a 4-minute mile for DAOs, right? So Moloch, the 4-minute mile for DAOs means sort of like, it's the first time someone runs a 4-minute mile, right? And the moment like someone does a 4-minute mile, everyone starts running 4-minute miles because the mental barrier is sort of broken.
Yeah, the bar changes.
Moloch DAO was this really simple DAO that like basically coordinated Ethereum public goods funding, right? It brought a lot of like Ethereum OGs together. They put in like 100 ETH at a time, and later on like Consensus, Joe Lubin, Vitalik will all put in like 4,000 ETH together, right? But like initially it was just like $200,000 coordinated and started distributing grants, and I was really inspired by that. It was like, wow, like I'm all about use cases and actual user values. I'm like, wow, that's actually like real today, right? I wanted to join it, but unfortunately, I was rejected from joining that DAO, and potentially even
why? How did this work? Like how?
Yeah. So,
why were you rejected?
So membership in these Moloch DAOs, right, were like permissioned. So you had to approve your membership, and it was done, and then you had to go through a voting process. And in a way, like Moloch was really cool back then. It was like the cool kids club, and like it had a lot of hype, and I guess Amin knew a lot of the work I was doing on the application layer, so he thought like, hey, I know about like the application layer. We should get another perspective in this like Ethereum public goods funding group, right? But no one else knew me apart from Amin, who created Moloch DAO, and I was also too poor to put in 100 ETH. So I was poor, broke, and no one knew who I was. So, and they rejected me from donating to public goods funding. It's like amazing way to, what a great way to inspire devotion and inspiration. But Amin, I talked to him afterwards, and he was like, "Why don't you fork Moloch DAO and just like take the DAO and do grants for like application layer stuff, right?" And I'm like, you know what? That'd be hilarious if I did. So I sort of like looked into it. And yeah, like we went ahead and forked it, and I think that was like my first ever, not being an engineer, that was the first smart contract set of smart contracts I deployed on the mainnet as well. James Young and Alex Hoffman was sort of like helping me with that, right? And from then we just gave out $1,000 to $5,000 grants. Honestly, we were just trying to convince people.
Where did you get the money from?
Yeah, good point. We barely scraped together 150 grand. Just to fund grants from, and some early supporters were Matic, Graph, Spankchain, New Cypher, like really great Alex Vanisand, Jamie Pitts. This is for with this, I guess, intention of donating to the community as well, to fund things, right, with no return. And there was like a wide variety of people who like pitched in personally with a lot of 10 ETH donations. It was just like a really great sort of rallying spirit of the community at like a darker time where like, let's do this as an experiment. Let's like do something with this, right? So, we started giving out grants, and we realized as we were giving out grants, we were starting to attract a really smart group of people who were like experimenting quite a bit, and we just kept on doing this for like throughout 2019, right? And we had like a demo day, even though like the grants projects are sort of in Berlin, and like. It just became a really great community where I think it was focused on helping one another, right? Like our motto is, if you want to go fast, you want to go alone, but if you want to go far, go together, right? That's sort of the tagline. It's like an African proverb we stole, and so from there, I never really cared about DAOs. I just cared about helping early stage projects, and that was what I still focus on today. But at the end of 2019, we decided to sort of take Moloch DAO, I mean, not Moloch DAO, the fork of Moloch, which is Metacartel DAO, that did grants only, and then figure out how to then we try to create Metacartel Ventures or Venture DAO. And what that was is sort of like this challenge of like, how do we actually use a DAO to invest into projects in Ethereum, right? And that was when, we had to figure out like basically how do you couple legal entity with a DAO, and like, how do you operate like that? And that's when we launched that to invest into projects, with the expectation of a return, right? And I think we launched a DAO, ETH Denver. Funny enough, so Moloch DAO, the former mile of DAOs, I would say, launched at ETH Denver 2019, and Metacartel Ventures or Venture DAO was launched at ETH Denver or deployed, ETH Ever 2020. So it's sort of like a nice full circle there. And so and sort of that's sort of like when I first made my first investments, to be honest. Like I didn't know anything about investing. It's always like with like the purpose of launching these DAOs was to help and fund early stage founders and like application layer products. Like today there's so much funding around, but back then there was absolutely no funding, and like $25,000 meant so much to like a project. So that's where we really wanted to just like get more capital to founders, right? And that sort of kickstarted like my interest in sort of investing, I'd say. Like at least, grants in a way is capital allocation, and it's all about finding the best and earliest, like most interesting projects as early as you can, right?
Okay, what should people do now? It's like May 2021.
Sure.
You're maybe like maybe the developer, but you don't want to contribute code, right? Or maybe you're a product manager, UX designer, community person going into the space. Like where do you go on the internet to start contributing and learning about this stuff?
I think hackathons are a great way to discover new projects at sort of inception, if you want to work on that level, right? Where you can find other people, where they're just starting out projects. You can help them think about product. You can actually drive strategy, drive communications, drive a lot of the business development and thinking around how to build out the product. I think that Gitcoin kernel is a really like the Gitcoin kernel fellowship is another great place to actually come in and meet other like-minded people and like collaborate and meet early stage projects too. Like I think nowadays, it's no longer so technology driven. I think everyone understands that to launch a decentralized network that are owned by communities, it's like one half is technology, the other half is like the community, right? Community of contributors, not just like. And the challenge is not necessarily creating the biggest Telegram group, but really understanding how can you create the biggest community of contributors that can actually drive forward and contribute and add value to the network, right? So there's these two challenges, and oftentimes, you need like two sides of the project to like push either one forward.
Okay, so they are already at a hackathon. They're going to build amazing stuff this weekend. Where should they go on like Tuesday or whenever the hackathon ends? Is there like one Telegram group or Discord or like subreddit or Twitter account where you would point them other than following you on Twitter?
I would say that it's a good point. I would say that there's a lot of I think back when we launched the Metaconsole Grant style, it was like the only source of funding you could get to sort of like build out your product without taking on any investment. But nowadays, I think every DeFi project really has their own treasury and has an allocation of funding for grants, right? So if you're building something that is related to say index products, right? You might actually want to go to DAO known as Index Co-op, right? That launches like different indices and actually ask for grants to build out your project, right? If it's related to lending, you might go to Aave and ask for a grant there, right? Or swaps, Uniswap, and then each one of these can actually provide grants funding, right? So I think every DeFi project out there is really a Balancer, right? Or Chainlink, right? Every community nowadays really has this capacity to support the communities in this fashion. And I think further downstream, then obviously there's like early stage source of capital, right? But I mean, even Metaconsole today, Metaconsole DAO still runs a grants program and still gives out sort of like fairly early stage sort of grants to projects.
Pretty cool. Marta, how are you? How are you doing with the treadmill?
It's good, yeah. I'm
good?
getting further and further, yeah.
So I actually don't know how your road into the space looked like, and what your advice for people would be. Would be super curious to listen about this.
So I mean, my road in this space is as usual. It's a series of randoms and a bit of luck and a bit of stupidity, I guess. So I have background in computer science. I did my PhD in security and privacy, and kind of was quite passionate about that. So I was like in the Tor community. I was very involved in setting up the first free and open source foundation in Poland, where I come from. But then started working for various companies. The standard like Silicon Valley for like to work for Apple. And I definitely decided that's not what I do. And I really didn't enjoy that. But I wanted to stay in Silicon Valley. And as one of the things that I was doing for my PhD, I was running a project between Deutsche Telekom, which is a big telecom in Germany, and Mozilla, the Firefox browser Mozilla. So I had a lot of friends in that space as well. So long story short, I got an offer. A friend called me up as I was actually signing the contract. And I was like, oh, I just started this little thing in Bitcoin space. Do you want to join us? I was like, well, I just signed a contract, so no, but let's catch up. And so he brought to this catch-up lunch, I didn't know, 5 people, 6 people from the company, something like that. It was like, I mean, to the audience here, it doesn't sound really surprising, but, San Francisco, very fancy coffee shop, and this bunch of people with leather jackets, blue hair, kind of all weirdos a bit come in. And they start talking about this whole Bitcoin and anarchy, or, creating government-less countries and stuff like that. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, because I literally never heard about Bitcoin. Like, maybe something because I was in tech, but not. And it was early on. But I said, well, you are awesome. You are really my type of people. I want to work with you. And that company was Blockstream. So I lucked out a bit. I mean, I couldn't start any better, really. But working with Blockstream, I realized the potential of blockchain is much bigger and greater than just Bitcoin. And I became very much of a blockchain maximalist rather than Bitcoin maximalist. And then the opportunity arrived. Brian Delbendorf, the executive director of Hyperledger, reached out, and I moved to Hyperledger, which was permission blockchain space. Interesting to see how enterprises, big and small, are trying to embrace the opportunity, and also they don't understand the democratization that comes with blockchain. They still want to use the same blockchain, but in their kind of very old school boardroom thinking, which it was a fascinating journey. I mean, it was 4.5 years in observing the space and seeing some of the biggest companies, doing POCs and failing, and then building consortia and failing in that. That was really interesting. And then Balancer came up as, again, pure luck. And when I heard that I could be part of building a community or helping build a community that will be able to handle a DAO, which is a lot harder, I think, what you were talking about, which is kind of bottom-up approach, people coming up, chiming or chipping in some money for grants and so on. Here, a lot of those companies, if you think about it, like Uniswap, Maker, and whatever else, they come from a centralized point, really, of an organization that is trying to deploy the code and do the things, build the community, decentralize itself, become a DAO, which is a really challenging thing. And I was just listening to a podcast before our panel, and about governance and about how we really always iterate on the things that we know. We can't really build something completely different. So hoping that we will, in one iteration, come up with this amazing decentralized world and decentralized governance, that a lot of things would have happened to succeed in that. But
what's the podcast? Where should people go to jump in and learn about governance?
Yeah, okay. So I quite like Bankless podcast. I think it's a very good one. But it's and there's an episode about governance there. But something that I absolutely want to echo is training, and I think passion is really important. Something that I think we all four have here in common is that we didn't look to get rich on Bitcoin. We were passionate about something and wanted to do it, and then this became our job. And I think that this space is currently very much driven by money, which saddens me, because with that, I don't think that we are making as much progress as we could if people were much more interested in understanding what we are building and participating in building that, rather than just trading on on coins or tokens. And with hackathons, one thing that I would wish actually hackathons in general do better is continuity of the project. Because indeed, it's great to come to a hackathon. I've organized a lot of hackathons in my life, and hack something away for 72 hours or whatever else, win the prize, and then you never touch the repo again. And that is what is a pain for me, because so much work it really. Or, it's a bounty thing. So you build like the sketch of a solution, you win the bounty, nothing happens afterwards. So I think that we have a long way to go to start utilizing those brilliant young people that come and want to learn, and mentoring them more into being long-term contributors and participants in this community. And I think that it's easier now, but it's still very cliquey in some ways, or it's very fragmented. Maybe that's like, if you come into the DeFi space and you want to understand, like, what is the difference between all of those sushi swaps, balancers, uni swaps, whatever, like, how do you learn about those things? And I mean, I'm facing that problem, and I haven't found good resources yet, ones that would be kind of clearly laying out the space. And it's basically a lot of reading and Googling. And Discord channels. I think that going on Discords and asking questions and not being afraid, because all of those communities are really friendly. Like, being a noob is it's not a surprise to us, really. I mean, there's like 90% of people who come to Discord. But sometimes, you stick around, you learn something, you stick around, and that turns into your full-time job.
Also, it's totally cool to be anonymous in this discourse. If you have if you're for any reason uncomfortable and scared or whatever, just pretend you're a dog or a cat or an anime, and that's very acceptable and very cool. Cool. Let's do because we talked a lot about the past and how to start building towards the future, but it's actually would be very cool to hear 5-minute versions of the things you're focusing on. What do you think will play out this year, and what's interesting for you right now? And we can start with Peter has to run in 3 minutes. Peter, okay, can you tell us what's happening in DAOs right now, and what's the coolest thing this year for the future of DAOs, and where should be people looking at it to stay up to date? As a last thing, I know it's the middle of the night. If you have it in you before falling asleep, that would be pretty awesome to give 5-minute or 3-minute version of that.
The coolest thing about DAOs is that anyone can join these communities and work, contribute, and get paid for the time. It's pretty meritocratic in that sense. And there's communities like Index Corp, where they're building I guess these financial products, I guess indices, right? DPI, FLI, and the cool thing is that you don't need a degree in finance to come along and understand what they're building. You don't need to. You can read up all about it. You can learn about the processes that they use to actually sort of rigorously test and conduct due diligence and design ideas. And anyone involved with Insect Connection can really just come on the forums and start learning and start contributing, right?
What are the DAOs going to change this year? Totally. Should we be on the lookout for DAOs for buying NFTs, or DAOs for funding basic infrastructure, or DAOs for funding longevity, or or investing? What are the top 3 interesting things that you see there that are maybe not obvious to people that are just coming into the space?
I think everything we understood as a community will become a DAO, or have, or effectively, right? That everything. I don't know. To be honest, that's an interesting question. I see every community as a DAO. I mean, most communities, online communities, have these abilities to really govern themselves, allocate capital, manage spending. They just don't have the tools yet. Maybe they're on chain, but I think everything really well. I mean, that's a general take. There's nothing
interesting.
There's progress in every direction, so it's hard to really point out a single one, but that's a general theme.
So it's just like a layer for communities. It's like tech infrastructure for like literally every community. That's cool. That's. Do you think like people will understand this at scale this year, or in 10 years, or in 5 years? Like, is this happening right now, or is it still like super soon?
There was a prediction I did have where, like, I think in 5 years it's going to be sort of like a fringe concept, but it's generally going to be something everyone really understands in tech. Like there's going to be the current generation of DAOs will basically give birth to like all these DAO workers effectively. This worker economy that's all sort of based on these DAOs, and I don't think that's really going away. So yeah.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Peter. Sleep well, and see you on the internet. Where should people follow you?
Twitter is the best.
Twitter is the best, and your handle is?
Yeah, my username, Peter Pan. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, I think it's on the website. It's on the Zero X Hack website. Perfect. Thank you, Peter. Bye. Marta, so back to you. Like, what 3-minute version of like what's happening right now in governance? What's like the thing that's going to happen like within a year to 3 years? Like, is this going to be mainstream, or are we still going to be in the experimentation phase? Like, where is this at?
I think that I have a much sadder view of the DAOs right now, and I think that no one has yet successfully launched a DAO, at least from that kind of start with a company or start with an organization and dissolve into DAO, rather than let's get together and start doing some grants and funding. And this is a very complicated thing because bankless. Sorry, Cornel, I'm just repeating. The podcast is bankless, as in no bank. I think that there is a lot we have to figure out, and these things, while intellectually we can understand them, there is still a lot of aspects that we need to figure out, like dispute resolution. Because, like, okay, so we have those smart contracts that are running smoothly and doing all the things, and we have on-chain governance where you have tokens, and it's usually one token, one vote. That's great, but what if, do we all have to vote on all of the decisions, or do we have a subset of people? How is this subset chosen? All those things, that the reason why we have so little participation in election and democracy is because people are lazy, and we don't really want to participate in all of that governance stuff. We want just things to happen. So philosophically, I'm very much there. I don't know how much we need to figure out also in terms of like the regulatory stuff, because DAOs are, geography-less. So who decides on the regulation there? But I think that there are a lot of interesting things happening in the meantime, and kind of creating the building blocks. So, for instance, last week we launched Balancer v2, which is finally the right version of Balancer protocol. And we kind of aim actually not to provide the most beautiful UI, but for people to take the protocol and build on top of it, like Aave is doing, like Gnosis is doing and stuff. So I think that there is a lot of potential in trying to start using the protocols and building something innovative on top of it. That's what I think is what I'm most excited about. People will come up with, and what will they hack out?
Super cool. So I know that we have to wrap up soon because people want to go and like focus on hacking. And if there are any outstanding questions that we should cover, like shoot them up in chat. But I'm actually very curious to ask Patrick where the oracles are at. Like what's gonna happen this year or within 3 years with oracles? Who is using this right now? Who is going to be using that? And is it like something that is now used by 100 developers all over the world, or is it like whole financial infrastructure for 500 million people is on it? Like, what's the scale, and where this is headed in like 1 to 3 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when we talk about smart contracts today, most of the time we're actually talking about what's called a hybrid smart contract. And a hybrid smart contract is a smart contract that uses the blockchain, the layer 1, as that settlement layer, but uses some form of external data or external computation to arrive at its settlement. Some examples of that right now, for example, are the vast majority of DeFi. Surprisingly enough, when people think of oracles, oftentimes they don't think of DeFi, but oracles are kind of one of the main things that's powering it, right? If you have a borrowing and lending protocol like Aave, for example, you're getting your pricing data from an oracle, from a decentralized network. And Aave is a protocol that gets its data from Chainlink price feeds or Chainlink data feeds, or Synthetics, which is an oracle-based derivatives platform or DEX that makes synthetic assets based on the price of those assets in the real world.
Just to jump in, if people don't know this, like the value locked in in DeFi right now is 86.5 billion, and value locked in Aave that Patrick was just talking about is 12.3 billion. So these are like no small stakes. This is like happening for real, working, and it's like I would already call it like entering the mainstream in some sense, but like it will be 100x bigger, just to like underscore for newcomers that this is already a big thing, not like a fringe thing.
Yeah, no, that's a great underscore because yeah, exactly that, right? It's not these decentralized Oracle networks. They're not like some play thing that a couple researchers cooked up and they're like, hey, one day it's already here. It's already powering the vast majority of these protocols, or at least a large amount of them, to have these battle tested, secure hybrid smart contracts or hybrid platforms, right? Because they're getting some type of Oracle feed, into their smart contract. So, and that's kind of really the bare minimum of what these oracles can do, right? Is aggregating data, in the real world and bringing it on chain, right? This is kind of this is really the lowest hanging fruit of oracles, if you will. If we level up, if we go one tier higher, we start getting to what's called, some type of Oracle services or off-chain services. Basically, oracles do anything that a blockchain itself can't. And that sounds like, wait, anything? Like, really? And the answer is yes, really anything a blockchain can't, because blockchains are these deterministic systems. Everything that happens on a blockchain happens in this walled garden. And so they can't connect to your, to your phone bill, right? They can't connect to your Grubhub. They can't connect to your internet. They don't have a way to get in, right? Or a way to get out. Oracles are this lens. They're these connecting pieces to allow all these services. So getting data into your smart contracts so you can actually do some of these DeFi things is really the lowest hanging fruit. But it extends to pretty much every application in a blockchain world. When we talk about NFTs, right, we're talking about creating, some type of non-fungible token, some type of a product or piece of art or whatever. We've seen a lot of projects use Chainlink to create digitally scarce, randomized NFTs, right? Using the Chainlink VRF. This is kind of one of these next steps. Getting random numbers in a deterministic system is not actually possible, which sounds kind of crazy because if you go online and you Google, random number generator, right? And you hit create random number, it'll pop out what seems to be a random number. But getting random numbers, computers aren't actually great at getting random numbers. They actually look at some spot in memory and they say, hey, this looks random enough. We'll give them that number, right? And in blockchain, where there's often a lot of money in the line and everybody can see, every piece of memory, doing this usually fruits in some type of hack or attack. And we've seen a lot of protocols, either using a poor random number generator or even poor data feeds, and they get hacked because of this, right? And they lose millions of dollars, right? Oftentimes, when you hear about these flash loan attacks, you hear about these crazy hacks. The last time I did a quick calculation, about half of them were actually Oracle attacks, where some protocol was using a non-decentralized Oracle or a subpar Oracle standard, and they lose $20 million. Boom, like that, just because they said, hey, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna input the numbers myself or something like that, and not use kind of these programmatic, this cryptographically secure methods, right? These smart contracts move us from a world where we are, where we rely on kind of brand guarantees, right? They move us out of that world into a world where we have these crypto economic guarantees. And that's really what, is the difference between the real world today and this better world that we want to have with blockchain, right? In the real world today, if you don't like something, if you don't like a product or service, well, what can you do? You can walk down the street and you can go to its competitor, right? And then you just kind of have to keep bouncing back and forth as all these places make these promises to you that they ultimately never fulfill, because we have to trust in the brand. But that's not why we're building this new system, right? We're building a world that's cryptographically secure, and there are these crypto economic guarantees instead of kind of these brand guarantees. So oracles allow us to keep these crypto economic securities that blockchain gives us and connect the real world pieces to the security of the blockchain. So oracles take blockchains and take them out of kind of this fun experiment and into this real world applicable application that everybody can use in their everyday lives, and you can literally do endless things with them. So data feeds is really kind of the smallest hanging fruit. Chainlink VRF is rapidly getting more and more. It's this random number generator service, and we're seeing other products and projects come out as well. A generalized cross-chain bridge is being built with Chainlink oracles. What's called the Chainlink Keeper networks, where you can automate interactions with your smart contracts in a decentralized manner, is being built. So all these layers and layers and layers of these off-chain services are being built to keep your smart contracts, keep these blockchains as the settlement layer for being to do everything that we want to do in real life, just in a blockchain, crypto economically guaranteed setting. So, and yes, it's not some fairy tale. It's not this little thing. It's massive. It's happening right now. And yeah, as Chris mentioned, there's a lot of locked value in these right now. So it's not just these have been battle tested. They've been out for quite some time. A lot of the DeFi protocols that are using Chainlink data feeds been using it basically since inception. And yeah, if you're looking to build something really, really cool, definitely check out the documentation. Definitely jump into the Discord. I'm going to be in the Discord for this hackathon, and so will the rest of our team. So feel free to reach out, ask questions, join the community, say hello, say hi. Again, as I was saying earlier, these are really the places where people learn, people grow, and people take ideas and bring them to these life-changing protocols. So really excited to see what everybody builds.
Did you see the question in the side chat?
Oh, sorry, I started just going. Can combining oracles with DAOs to create a trusted meritocracy be a viable? That would be so cool. Sorry, be a viable use case. Yeah, combining oracles and DAOs would be insane. I don't think a protocol's actually done that. There's your alpha leak for the day. There's your hackathon project. That would be insane cool. Maybe a DAO that's based on some type of data feed. The DAO uses a random number. It uses like the Chainlink API calls to connect to some off-chain service. Yeah, like to me that sounds like insanely cool. Please do that. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
And Patrick, to what you said about security and the things being hacked, I think this is, if we talk about opportunities and potential for newcomers, I think it's a gold mine. First of all, I mean, the bounties are insanely high in this space. So bug bounties, we launched a bug bounty that is currently at $4 million to break V2. I mean, these are really good money if you know what you're doing. But security is a really, really important space, because very few people actually give you any guarantees when it comes to DeFi, smart contracts and all that, right? Nobody will write one and set up a company that will verify and put guarantees and some insurance in case the smart contract doesn't work. I mean, there are some that are trying to do it, but not much. So it is a very good opportunity for people to get involved.
100%.
Really cool.
Couldn't agree
really
with you
cool.
more.
I think we have to slowly be wrapping up and let people be hacking, but we probably will be all hanging out on Discord. and ready to help however we can. So just hit us up. I just wanted to tell everybody, you probably know this, but just to be sure, tomorrow Ethworks is going to host the Blockchain Beginners Weekend Bootcamp. Make sure to register to the schedule, link posted on 0xhack.dev website. You probably know about it if you're watching this, but just to make sure, this is, I was asking everybody what's the best way to get up to speed on this, and the suggested answer was like, this is the excellent way. This is the hackathon that you're just attending right now, but other ways are also like excellent, like outside of this weekend. Any last comments from Marta or Patrick?
So I actually do have to jump, but I do see a quick question here. Can you say something about Smarky project that is cooperating with Chainlink? Yes, I don't know too much about it, or really what's going on. But if you reach out to Harry, he's in the Discord. Say hi to Harry. He's doing some fantastic things over there.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Have a great day, and see you on Discord.
Thank you.
Marta, any last words of wisdom from you? You are muted.
No, I actually thought that we were wrapping up. No, just get involved, ask questions, come to Discord, come to events. We are having an AMA on Discord on Monday next week, so on Balancer Discord. So if you are curious about DeFi and V2, you can always come to our Discord and ask questions there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm joining the Discord right now, both Balancer and 0xhack. So if you have any questions during the hackathon, let us know. The broader team was also the future of blockchain. And the last question, if we didn't run out of time, was supposed to be how and when are we going to onboard first billion people to crypto? I don't know how many people we are at. Like Coinbase has 56 million users. I would guess that the total is like less than 200 million probably, right? And that's like being extremely generous, right? Do you have any bet?
I don't bet. That's my one rule in my life, is that I don't bet.
Do you have any predictions?
To be honest, I think that we are getting to something very interesting. As part of my community building, I'm also doing a lot of kind of new user support and helping people out when they have issues with their trades and pools and stuff. And I recently had a 67-year-old man who had some questions and was using Balancer platform to do some investments and invested like a significant amount of his savings in it. So I think we're getting there. If this almost 70-year-old guy can do it, it's a matter of time and education. I think education is incredibly important because we are giving people these amazing tools and we're democratizing finance. And we just forgot to tell. It's a bit like we're giving them knives, but we just forgot to tell them to point them outwards. So, yeah.
Excellent.
We need more education.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Great being here. You too.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, chat. See you on Discord. Yeah. See everybody on Discord. Thank you so much. Bye.